Next, a KQED Newsroom special on the arts.
Sometimes it takes more than a 90-minute intermissionless play to kick somebody out of their 40-hour work week.
An entertainer's take on American history and a world-renowned artist tackling the global refugee crisis.
You know, they all have families, have children, and we cannot pretend we are naive on those issues.
Plus, the joy served up by the coolest museum in town, focused on something sweet.
When you see the power of human connection in such a simplified form, I think it can be a great example of how we should move forward as a country.
Hello, I'm Thuy Vu. Welcome to a special edition of KQED Newsroom about arts and culture. On this program, we're revisiting stories from our archives with innovative and influential figures in film, the performing arts, and visual culture. We begin with the role of comedy in today's political climate. From immigration policy to healthcare to the economy, there's a lot going on in politics. That means plenty of material for comedians like Roy Wood Jr. He's a correspondent on Comedy Central's The Daily Show. KQED's Shirasini caught up with him while he was in town for the comedy festival, Colossal Clusterfest. They met at an interactive exhibit showcasing President Trump's love of Twitter.
So where are we today?
This is the Donald J. Trump Presidential Twitter Library. Everybody at The Daily Show, we sat around and we started looking closer at the president's tweets over the last couple of years. Everyone in our digital department started looking at ones, and you start noticing certain patterns. There's a lot of tweets where he's arguing with celebrities. There's a lot of tweets where he's trying to end people's careers. There's a lot of contradictions. There's stuff about policy. So when you really start looking at all of the president's work, you see, oh, well, this is an exhibit. You know, Barack Obama's all about books. Our president's all about Twitter. So we felt like the best way to give people the experience of walking through the brain of our commander-in-chief is to just put it all on the wall. This is all the people he's argued and talked trash about Jeb Bush, talked trash about Rob Patterson. Over here, those are the verified survivors. Those are people that he's talked trash about, but somehow they still persevered. And I'm not sure whether you leave this library feeling better about the country or more horrified, but you'll definitely feel something.
Are black people too sensitive about? One of the themes you frequently return to on The Daily Show as a correspondent is the issue of race relations. How did growing up in the Deep South in Birmingham, Alabama influence how you tackle the issue of race?
I think a lot of our views on race as adults are shaped when we're young. But I think the important thing my parents gave me was a lot of pride in myself, because if you're not careful, if you're a victim of racism, that can mess with your self-esteem. I've been called the N-word, I've been harassed. I won't dare act like what I've been through compares to what a lot of people have gone through in this country and, you know, the civil rights soldiers, you know, from back in the day. But I think for me, it's important to make sure that I shine a light on the stuff that's happening in the corners of America where a lot of people, you know, don't consider. And having been from the South and having been in that world, I feel like I'm as equipped as any other correspondent on the show to be able to go and tell those stories.
Roy, you're the father of a toddler. What will you tell your son when he's older about what it's like to be a black man in America?
My son has to understand that being black is a gift and that sometimes it's a burden. You know, everybody goes, have you had the big talk? When are you gonna have the talk? And you know, they're talking about the birds and the bees. To me, the big talk is how to deal with the police and instructing my son on that relationship. It's something that I think about all the time, man, because, you know, being black is a job sometimes, and my son's got to know that he's on the clock 24/7.
We heard about the March for Our Lives in D.C., but there was another march going down all the way out in Helena, Montana. And out here at this march, people were taking a stand for the real victims of gun violence: guns.
For The Daily Show, when the March for Our Lives rally was taking place to protest gun violence in schools, you were actually at a pro-gun rally in Montana. What did that experience teach you about people who oppose gun restriction?
There are a lot of people who oppose gun restriction who are level-headed. Everybody thinks that someone, just because they want the Second Amendment, that they got 8 guns and 12 Rambo bazookas in their back pocket and they're all lunatics. There were a lot of level-headed people that were just making arguments for wanting their guns, and I think that the problem is that we only hear the extremes in one another. And I was very happy that I went to the pro-gun rally and had an opportunity to talk to these people. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people who are pro-gun who, in my opinion, are out there. Anytime you think a kid that got shot at a high school is a paid actor, there's something wrong with you, period. But the problem is that people who will call a Parkland kid a crisis actor overshadow the level-headed people who go, let's tiptoe into legislation. I'm open to legislation. Let's figure out a way to legislate this without it getting out of hand, because it is a slippery slope. It was dope to be able to get to Montana to talk to those people.
What's the challenge of tackling these difficult subjects such as racism and gun violence through comedy? Is there a risk, for example, of belittling these issues by finding humor in them?
The joke is never on the issue. The joke is on the argument and the prevention of it. We would never tell a joke about someone getting shot, but the joke is on how do we keep this from happening, and who are the people that are keeping this from happening again. And I think that's where the humor is. And I think if we can laugh about it, you're more willing to talk about it. And if you're willing to talk about it, then you're closer to a solution. So I feel like the jokes have to happen.
How do you decide what stories to cover on The Daily Show?
The Daily Show, that's a whole nother world. Like, we'll look at the news and we'll try and find, if we can say something that we believe is different from what other shows are saying, then we'll say it. And then sometimes it's just about figuring out what issues are important to us. You know, there's issues where it may not be national news. I covered a story about some stuff that's happening on the Mississippi River with a boondoggle with the Army Corps of Engineers. Not a big news story, but it's something that affected people. It's something that economically and environmentally was ruining the country. And thankfully, right before President Obama got out of office, he changed it. I like to believe that my story is the reason that you're welcome, Missouri. That's what I tell myself at night before I go to bed.
Roy, thank you so much. It was great talking with you. Yeah, thank you.
Now to Cabaret, where a daring show has been examining American history through some of this country's most popular songs. Titled A 24-Decade History of Popular Music, the show has been shining a light on everything from slavery to gay activism. KQED's Chloe Veltman sat down with drag artist and Stockton native Taylor Mack.
Well, here we are under the stage at the Curran Theatre in San Francisco. I'm here with Taylor Mack, the creator of the show, the chief performer, and his co-creator, costume designer, Machine Dazzle. Thank you both for being here. It's great to get a chance to chat with you here in the costume shop as all this stuff is going on.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Once was lost, but now I'm found.
So your show tells the history of the United States of America in 246 songs, and it all begins with a smashing, ball-busting rendition of Amazing Grace. Why that song?
I wanted to set up this kind of concept that we're here to worship the act of creation, not the creator. So we take that song and we talk about grace, and what is grace to me is the act of creation.
And what inspired you to tell the history of this country through song?
I wanted to use a form that best represented how you use kind of imperfection as a way to rally people. I think of classical music as, you're reaching for the hem of God, you're reaching for perfection, you're striving for virtuosity. And a popular song is something that is reaching the people. It's reaching them in order to rally them to a cause, to celebrate together, to mourn together.
And you guys also tell the history of this country through costume.
He cursed us with a Congress.
I like to look at what was happening at the time, what was new at the time, what were people doing, what was invented at the time. These are the opening shoes. And just like turn those ideas and those inventions into costumes. My favorite ribbon.
And Machine, as weird as it sounds, is redesigning backstage, like during the show.
On the fly?
I always need to add things and change things. Now that's a shoe. One of my favorite costumes that I've made for Taylor ever is the Crazy Jane costume. Crazy Jane has a wig made out of champagne corks, and she lives in a barrel. When she takes the barrel off, it's like she has everything in there. She has her toiletries in there. She has her bedroom objet in there.
So you're wearing a barrel, not to mention heels, high heels for 24 hours.
Sometimes women will say to me on the street, if I'm dressed up, wearing the high heels, or often after shows, women will say, how could you wear those heels? I could never wear heels like that. And I always say, well, for you, it's oppression, but for me, it's liberation. mean, I get to wear this art. It's not just costuming, you know, they're little art pieces. So the fact that you get to bring your own personal art into somebody else's art and they get to commingle and make something bigger than both together is energizing.
And have you ever had a wardrobe malfunction?
Wow.
It is the genius of performance art. There is no failure.
Yeah, we don't call them malfunctions. We call them, you know, not acts of God, opportunity, not acts of God, acts of the goddess.
The point is to incorporate calamity.
They wished me one more day to stay.
And in fact, the show was inspired by the very first AIDS walk in San Francisco.
Which you were at.
Which I went to, and I was 14 years old, and it was the first time I'd ever seen an out homosexual, and it was thousands of them all at the same time. It's the first time I ever saw a drag queen. It was a sister of perpetual indulgence. You know, so that event is what makes me want to make theater. And so in making the show, I wanted to make a metaphorical representation of that event.
Now, you can use your pillows as shields if you want to.
Why are your performances so long?
Well, sometimes it takes more than a 90-minute intermissionless play to kick somebody out of their 40-hour work week.
Okay, so everyone, you understand how it goes? Let's do it.
I think that there's real wonder in just making things go on longer than people expect, longer than they think they're capable of handling something. So I really like to put people through it.
Well, thank you very much, Taylor Mack and Machine Dazzle, for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Chinese dissident and artist Ai Weiwei has long been a vocal critic of his own country's government. In his latest film, Human Flow, he addresses the global refugee crisis and says countries around the world should be held accountable. KQED's Monica Lam spoke with Ai Weiwei when he was in San Francisco.
Your film, Human Flow, documents massive human migration due to war, violence, disaster. What did you learn from making this film?
What I have learned is very simple. Among these 65 million refugees, there's no single one is willing to leave their home. They all struggle not to leave with very heavy price they have to pay. Their relatives, friends, or whole village vanished by war, by famine, or environmental problems.
United States President Donald Trump has cut in half, in fact, more than half, the number of refugees allowed in this country. What is your reaction to that?
I think at the current administration, what they did is beyond belief.
More than ever, we need the wall. We have drugs pouring through.
I should say it's shameful. A nation like the United States, which is the most powerful, not only leading in the economics, but should be the strongest nation in defending human rights. After all, U.S. is a nation of migrants. Just a few generations ago, we all come from somewhere.
Absolutely.
I never met a native here. I mean, to limit somebody's rights to move is almost the same as to push someone to leave their home.
The officials came here and told them, look, there's no way you're going to get papers to continue. Either you go voluntarily or we arrest you.
A lot of your work takes aim right at the heart of power, the Chinese government, corruption, and here at Alcatraz, the prison system. Do you think those in power are listening?
I know it's very hard to make a power listening, but that's why those voices are so necessary.
The children need to go to school. Majority of them, last 5 years, didn't go to school even one day.
And basically all those mistakes or those tragedies are made by human.
There is no bath, no showering facilities. The hygienic situation is very bad.
So if we don't want to be part of shameful condition, then leave us no choice to make our sound to be heard.
Do you think you're encouraging those in power to change or just making them look like fools, or is it the same thing?
I think we have to consider they're also human beings, of course. You know, we talk about the issues relate to everybody. They all have families, have children. It's different ways of communication. So I have to believe in this kind of struggle.
In your film, there's a scene of a man walking through a graveyard, and he's lost many of his loved ones. He's really speaking from his heart, just as an individual person. For people watching the film, what can they do about this?
First, I think we often talk about the crisis without asking why those people are being such a tragic journey. There's so many wars, Iraq war, Afghanistan war, Syria war. And we also see we are selling extremely dangerous weapons to dangerous locations. Big profit are made by United States or European leading nations. And we cannot pretend we are naive on those issues.
You call yourself an artist and activist. Do you also see yourself as a journalist?
I have a journalist card as a reporter, because if I go to those nations to interview people, often I have to have something protect me. So yes, I'm a journalist also. I did a lot of investigations, asked really tough questions, and to trying to get some facts out.
Thank you very much, Ai Weiwei.
Thank you.
In the world of entertainment, comedian and writer Hari Kondabolu is no stranger to addressing tough topics like race and ethnicity. He takes on the long-running cartoon series The Simpsons in his documentary titled The Problem with Apu. It explores how an Indian convenience store owner caters to stereotypes.
Problem is we didn't have any other representation in this country.
There was no Aziz, no Mindy, no Cal, no that dude who was on Lost, and that other dude from Heroes, and that dude that's in the Apu documentary. No politicians or reporters, and no whatever Deepak Chopra is. This is all we had. Apu reflected how America viewed us. Servile, devious, goofy.
And joining me now is Hari Kondabolu. So nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
The Simpsons was one of your favorite TV shows as a kid, and yet you were so frustrated with the character named Apu. Why?
Apu was a convenience store owner, very one-dimensional, stereotypical, and at that time, that's the only depiction South Asian Americans had, specifically Indian Americans. Like, we didn't have anything else. And initially, I think I was excited because we had something. When you have nothing, you're excited about anything. But as I got older, I realized, oh, this is all we have. And this is how my parents are depicted. And it's such a narrow way to be seen.
Was it the accents? Because a white actor, Hank Azaria, did the accent.
The accent's definitely a part of it. It's an accent meant to elicit laughter. It's not that realistic. The fact that everything he did always was connected to his Indianness, or what like the white writers and executives thought Indianness was.
You are taking on a well-loved TV show and taking on the question of Apu in relation to identity politics. So what was your process in deciding how to present this issue in a way that would make sense and matter to a broad audience?
Sure. I mean, I think The Simpsons is a great way where it's a great place to start because it's The Simpsons. It's a global show. Like, there's so many of us who grew up on it. The Simpsons at its peak influenced so much of the conversation of the country. I mean, it was a very important show. So that already gave me a place, an institution to start from.
What was the impact, do you think, of Apu?
I mean, I think for a lot of young South Asian Americans, I think it shaped our identity. There was a certain embarrassment sometimes about being who we were. There was an embarrassment of our parents. I mean, there was shame. There was a sense of we are not American. We are less American. We don't fit. We have to fight against this constantly. I mean, I think those early childhood experiences always shape you, and that was, I think, a thing that shaped a lot of us.
But yet there's a moment in your film where you interview your parents, and they're both Indian immigrants, and they say they weren't offended by Apu. They weren't bothered that the voice was done by a white actor.
Right. I mean, I think my mom said that it's not that she wasn't offended. It was that, like, it wasn't something she really worried about. When you're coming to this country and the stakes are so high, you're not really worried about things like how am I being seen? Like you worry about, you know, your bills. But I think as someone who was born in this country, grew up in this country, there's a certain entitlement that I think I rightfully have to expect the same as everyone else. My parents have now lived in America longer than they've lived in India. This is home, and I think they have that entitlement more now than they did before. They didn't even know if they were going to stay for the long term. So, I mean, I feel like that's a big difference. I expect to be treated the way everyone else is treated.
And you don't do accents in your comedy anymore. Is that part of that thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I did accents when I was 17, 18, 19 because I knew it would work. I knew it would work because of The Simpsons. I knew that that accent would work. And as a young comedian, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't silence. I was filling that with laughter. But as I got older, and particularly after 9/11, I realized the impact representation had, the impact of images, especially when South Asians were being beaten up around the country, Muslims, Sikhs. I knew that like us speaking out and us being public and showing a broad range of identities like would shape that public image. And I knew I couldn't do those voices anymore. It was so minimizing.
Your film, The Problem with Apu, grew out of a bit that you did a few years ago for Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell.
Yeah.
You worked on that show. A lot of your comedy deals with race and ethnicity. Do you view your comedy as a form of activism?
No, I mean, I mean, this film I think is a little different because it's an in-depth look at a particular topic. But my stand-up, at the end of the day, it has to make people laugh, and I'm not going to say something that is, even if it's thoughtful, that doesn't make people laugh. Because why would people listen to me? I mean, stand-up strength is that people listen because there's the promise of laughter. So, I mean, an activist goal is to push an issue and to get it as far as they can and to try to make progress, whether it's legislatively or socially. That's not my goal with stand-up. My goal with stand-up is to entertain people.
You scream, I scream, we all scream for ice cream. America's favorite frozen treat has gotten a made-for-millennials makeover at the Museum of Ice Cream. The traveling museum in downtown San Francisco allows visitors of all ages to indulge their sweet tooth and love of selfies. KQED's Shiraz Sadiq has the scoop.
We wanted to create a space that brought people together. This is a space that is unifying, it's a safe space, it's empowering, and ice cream is such a beloved treat that it just felt like the perfect combination.
This isn't your typical museum where the artwork is behind plates of glass. Here the artwork is meant to be touched, interacted with. Why did you take such an unconventional approach to the design of your museum?
Well, I find that museums can be a little bit isolating, right? There's this sense that you can't touch anything, or you're going to break something, and I think when you have that level of degree of constriction, it limits people from truly being able to express themselves. So we wanted to create a space where people could really be their authentic selves. They could laugh, they could have fun, they could touch something, and nothing would break. It's flipping this concept of the traditional museum on its head.
It's also a museum that's tailor-made for millennials and their love of Snapchat and Instagram. How did social media influence your design aesthetics and your choices?
It wasn't so much Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook that led the aesthetic design behind this, more so this sense of capturing the moment and what could we do from a design perspective that really allowed people to transport back. And we feel that the more visual the space is, the more people are able to do so.
The Museum of Ice Cream features 9 different themed rooms, including a gummy bear garden, rock candy cave, and the main attraction, a swimming pool filled with plastic sprinkles.
Raining sprinkles! There's just something so therapeutic, and really we made sure they would look as real as they do. They look like real sprinkles.
How many sprinkles are in this thing, roughly
100 million sprinkles. Yeah.
After using an air hose to remove all the sprinkles sticking to my clothes, Madison took me to meet Grant, a gold-horned unicorn standing tall in a field of rainbows.
My favorite room here is our rainbow room. It's an homage to San Francisco for the pride and inclusivity and diversity that this city has fostered and created for its entire existence. Inclusivity and making sure that all people feel safe and protected in this space is a huge mission statement of ours and something that we strongly value.
Thank you.
Green. Dipped in real magic.
But no trip to a museum for ice cream would be complete without delicious reminders of why this timeless treat never goes out of style, even after a makeover from millennials.
What you have in front of you here is ginger snap flavored ice cream with a gingerbread crumble on top with some sprinkles, and then we're gonna add this lovely strawberry basil sauce.
We want to make sure that this city feels that we are working in collaboration with ice cream creameries that have been around for a while. So each month we have a ice cream shop from San Francisco that's created a unique flavor that you can only get at the Museum of Ice Cream.
That is the bomb.
That's the answer we want. Yeah.
At the Museum of Ice Cream, you won't encounter artwork that's overtly political, but you can still express your opinion, even a political one, in the message statement room.
We wanted to create a space where people could take their emotions and how they felt and make a statement on the walls. We believe that this is an equalizing space. This is an opportunity for you to feel your authentic self, and if you have something to say that maybe is political or maybe is socially oriented, feel free to say it.
Madison, what does ice cream mean to you? What memories does it evoke?
When I think about it, it just brings me back to my childhood. I think of being a kid and sitting in my house and hearing the ice cream truck go off and the excitement and exhilaration I got from running outside and catching that truck to get my ice cream. I also associate it with my first memories of having autonomy. I remember my parents being like, here's $5, go out and get the ice cream by yourself. There's just something with that level of independence I just greatly associate with ice cream.
Maybe our universal love for ice cream springs from memories of what it was like to be a kid when your toughest decision was deciding what kind of scoop to get.
I love it. It's phenomenal. It's more than I ever imagined. We're celebrating my daughter's first birthday today, and so I'm excited to show her these pictures when she grows up and let her know that you went to a place that not everybody gets to go to. I think ice cream brings happiness. Like, who eats ice cream and is sad? You ready? It's fun, whether it's soft serve or, out of a tub or whatever. It's fun. Feels good.
We have people from cultures from all over the world who are coming together and talking with somebody they probably never would have had the opportunity to speak with. And they're talking about ice cream, and they're having fun. When you see the power of human connection in such a simplified form, I think it can be a great example of how we should move forward as a country.
That does it for us. For more of our coverage, go to kqed.org/newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Thank you for joining us.
Ready?